Well, we're jumping on the sports hour today, this portion of the podcast, and it's because, while it may not be an hour-long conversation, it's going to be a valuable one. Because sports is missed right now, sports is needed right now, and I'm sure my next guest, Gary Walker, would totally agree with me. Gary, welcome to this podcast.
Thanks for having me, Alex. How you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Obviously you're home. Everybody's pretty much home, and we don't know what the next steps are going to be with this. But I know that the pages that we run and that you've created, Friends Are Like NY Yankees and Friends Are Like the NY Yankees, we're doing a service to those Yankee baseball fans, aren't we, during this time?
I would hope so. I think we're doing what we have to do. We're keeping our members informed. That's what we want to do because we love the game, and we love our team, and we just want always for all good Yankee fans to know that whatever the situations are, whatever the news that's coming out in today's world is happening, and we can be involved and to keep supporting and following the team.
Well, and what I was thinking about pretty much the last few days with missing opening day, but I was thinking about how much baseball did play a role after 9/11 and the comeback that we had after those devastating attacks. I mean, you and I remember Bernie Williams up and down the corridor of Yankee Stadium shaking every hand of the first responders, and I truly hope we see that again this year from this generation of players.
Yes, it would be a nice thing to happen. To celebrate the causes, the victories, and just celebrating baseball in general. I grew up with baseball. I've been following baseball pretty much since 1964. As far as my dad teaching me the game, and I was fortunate enough to see Mickey on the field. For 2 or 3 games, with my uncle taking me from New Jersey back in the mid to late '60s. So it was a time where baseball in New York was king, and we still would like it to be king.
Well, I tell you, you're talking about king of baseball. I mean, 64, when you say that, I automatically think of the Bob Gibson, Tim McCarver connection. I mean, that defined the 64 year, did it not, for the Cardinals?
Well, to be technical, in 1964, I was only 5 years old, but my dad, rest his soul, was a National League guy, and he wanted. He was a Met fan. He was really a New York Giant fan. When they moved to San Francisco, he became a Met fan. Didn't really like the American League, but at that time, in the '60s, you can root for both teams, with the Mets and the Yankees. But times have changed, of course, and to me, it all changed pretty much in this town. Once again. The gap from the M&M boys, from the early 60s to the 50s Yankees, it changed back when George bought the team, and especially when Reggie came to town.
Well, I was going to say, so when did you think the change went from liking both teams to that? So it would be that moment specifically, or do you think other moments happened along the way to where the separation became even wider as the 70s came through, the 80s rolled along, the 90s rolled along?
Well, the thing was, in the early '70s, as I was growing with the team, these were my early years with the team. I really joined the team as a fan in like 1967, and even though I rooted for both teams at the time, but it's when Reggie came to town. When Reggie came to town, he changed the whole personality of the team. Of course, with the help of guys like Nettles and of course, having Thurman, who was the personality of the team himself. But that's what really, really brought, the Bronx Bombers back in those days, Yeah.
Well, you're not kidding when you say that. I mean, the Yankees hadn't won, since, I believe, the 50s, because they lost in '60 to Bill Mazeroski and the Pirates. But then They went on this drought. George Steinbrenner takes over. Then only 4 years later, he wins a World Series. I mean, that was one of the most dramatic turnarounds up until the 90s.
You have to understand that basically he, because of the money influx coming into the league, they really expanded their rules on free agency. So the thing is that that's when you had big owners now buying in, and Steinbrenner really was the pioneer of that. And to me, I mean, even though it changed the game really on a 180 spindle, the game in a lot of ways has improved in that sense, because and some of it was abused because free agency now the players do make a lot. They make too much money, but they made it more of a business standpoint. But it gave the opportunity of guys like George Steinbrenner to reshape a team within a certain amount of time, and the Dodgers were doing it now, and other teams have been doing it, and look at even the Houston Astros did it. So the point is that even though, like I said, there's heads and tails on these kind of things, and there were more positives than negatives on it, and you can see what it does to a team, not only in baseball but in sports as well.
Well, when Mr. Steinbrenner said he was going to have a hands-off approach, of course that changed pretty quickly, and he engineered one of the best successful franchises in baseball history.
Yes, he did, Alex. He had a vision. That's how he built his company. Had a shipyard company, and he invested in other things, and as well. And just for the listeners, George Steinbrenner also invested in the sport of horse racing as well. He owned a farm in Florida, which actually bred horses, and he owned race horses as well, and it was known as the Kinsman Stable,
which had Bellamy Road, by the way.
That is correct. Who won the Wood Memorial, at Aqueduct. Correct. That is correct. So.
And of course, it was interesting to see the Steinbrenner family in their Kentucky best at the Derby. He fell short, but man, that was winning the Wood Memorial was such a big success for Kinsman Stable. Now, Gary, you have all this passion, you have all this. So is that why you decided to turn it into a Facebook page or two? Is that your passion drove you to create these pages?
Well, like I said, the thing is that I had a small group to start. Facebook kind of offered me these pages because they saw I was into the team, and I was making posts on my personal pages. So they asked me if I'd like to expand, and I says, it's just trusting the people who are true fans and who are not there for any kind of sensationalism. So I decided to do it, and they were kind enough to give me 2 pages to explore new ideas and new people. So I decided to take them up on it, and we're a growing page. We are growing pages now, and people obviously are pretty satisfied on what we do. And we hope we make their, lives, and we entertain them as best as we can.
Well, I've been posting a lot about today, but I'm sure you've been posting memories that you have of the game. And if not, that'd be great to do as well, just to post memories. Hey, do you remember this happened? While we miss baseball now, let's go back in time for a bit. That's kind of what I've been hoping to achieve, is that we talk about the memories to keep them alive and to keep people entertained by that.
Well, yeah, right. Because let's face it, and I know the history of this team. There's no other team in sports probably in the world that has the history that we have, as far as fans that follow the Yankees. And
it's a global mark. I mean, New York Yankees is not just national; it's global, and it's in Japan. It's everywhere. It's impressive to see.
Yeah, Yankees are worldwide, and that's why the expression is known. It's Yankees universe.
Right, right. I have
Uh,
that shirt in my drawer, actually.
right.
So, Gary, what can we look forward to on your pages, and how can people find them?
Okay, what they can do is that if they are members of Facebook, we only do Facebook. What they could do is they can search friends who like the New York Yankees and friends who like the NY Yankees. Those are the two titles. Both pages. That one has the emblem on a flag with the New York interlock on a baseball diamond, and the other one has the famous Yankees emblem with the top hat, with the Uncle Sam top hat, and the baseball bat with the script Yankees. You can join. We just ask that that you're a Yankee, that you really like this team, because we want Yankee fans on this page, and we want them to be supportive and informative as well.
By the way, a quick sports update. James Dolan has tested positive for coronavirus. I mean, that is wild, if you ask me. But, Gary, I know you were talking about Manfred, and what is his thoughts about opening up? What are you reading out there for us this weekend?
Okay, well, Rob Manfred, as far as I've seen the video on his interview, he's stating that that baseball will be commencing this year, but of course they have to wait for everything to clear medically and schedule wise. They are recently they're thinking about trying to put a 140 game season together this year, but that of course would involve a lot of double headers during the season.
Well, that's going to be the interesting thing. Of course, in that era you grew up in baseball, you saw doubleheaders. Isn't that how they were for a while? Like that was the norm. Saturday afternoon doubleheaders, free, one admission.
Right, doubleheaders were great, but I mean, they are. It's you spend a day at the ballpark. It's a nice hot summer day, or it's a warm day, and you're watching the game you love, and you're with people, and everything is copacetic. But times have changed, and we're in a world now. It's the 21st century. It's basically a business stated game, as such as all sports now. So they want to go for the ticket sales and the revenue, and of course
Right.
because of the network shares as well. So, but they really don't want to lose too much TV money. That's really, to me, I think 50% of the problem with MLB right now. They really don't want to shut down, because if they do, they're going to lose a lot of television revenue money, because, of course, as you know, just like Yes Network, SNY, these owners own the network, and not only do they lose the gate, but they lose the television revenue as well.
Well, so you're saying if they were to doubleheaders, it would probably be a split doubleheader where each would be separate admission.
I think most likely, but they could probably they'll probably negotiate maybe a few games. They'll throw a bone now and then.
One more story about the week that I thought was fascinating was Scott Boras, a man who certainly doesn't want to lose any of his contract or his players' money for them, is advocating to play through Christmas. I think that's kind of wild, but is that a bizarre or reality we could face?
I personally, I just think he's sensationalizing it. I think he's being facetious. Maybe it's maybe that he's sending a message to MLB saying we could be playing on Christmas Day. It's maybe a little far-fetched, a far-fetched idea. Being ridiculous about it. Sometimes we don't know what these guys are trying to put across to us. But, like I said, once again, I believe that the MLB season will happen. I just don't know, we just don't know when, but they but I posted the Daily News is reporting that the earliest target date is going to be May 15th of this year, if everything works.
That would be a blessing. That would be a blessing. Now I can't let you go without asking this, Gary. Rally up a little bit because it's Saturday. No one else is doing anything. Let's rally up a little bit. Donald Trump going to A-Rod for advice? I don't know what to think about that. It's kind of crazy, but maybe he's looking at him as someone who could get the Stop the Spread movement going. I don't know, but it was just kind of a bizarre headline amongst it all that the former Yankee was contacted by the president about coronavirus.
I mean, I really don't want to politicize not only the game but our page, even though politics are always involved. But all I can say is that you know, one thing they both have in common: they love the media. President Trump loves the media, and A-Rod loves the media. So, you know.
Yeah, I think it was more of an effort to get people to stay inside. I mean, if A-Rod advocates something like that, his fan base would listen. That's just what I would think.
Yeah, I'd like to tell you. I would like to mention a story that happened to me in my life, where I did meet a New York Yankee twice in my lifetime, live. The Yankee was the New York baseball player Joe Pepitone. I met him at the stadium. You know, I shook his hand when they were doing batting practice. What happened was, to make a long story short, when my uncle took me to the old Yankee Stadium in the Bronx, we got there early and for batting practice. So I was about 7 or 8 years old back then, in like 1967, and I inadvertently said to him, I would like to meet Joe Pepitone. He goes, you want to meet him? He said that he's a friend of mine. And I said, I'm like, no way. So he walks down to the dugout. And he sticks his head at the end over the railing, and he says, is Joe down there? He says, Joe Pepitone, I got to speak with him. I'm a friend of his. So about a minute later, I'll never forget this. His head comes out, and Joe goes, who wants to talk to me? So my uncle shakes his hand. He says, remember me? My Uncle P goes, remember me? He says, I have a nephew he was a big fan of yours and loves you, and he wants to meet you. So he waved me in. I walked down, and I shook his hand, and he's like a real Italian guy. He had like the hair on his hand and big, huge hands too. And I shook his hands, and he said, nice to meet you. And I was like starstruck back then, and I just got a big kick out of it. And I found out years later that my uncle did that for me, and he didn't know Joe Pepitone.
Wow. And so what ended up happening?
Okay, what happened is that it's amazing how the world turns. In 1990 or 91, I was driving limousines for a while, and what happened was Make-A-Wish Foundation had an account with the limousine company I was with, and I had the job to pick him up. I picked him up at his house. He lived on Long Island, and I took him to the Make-A-Wish Foundation because he had a session of autographs, and they paid for the whole thing for the children and everything. Took his wife and his kids to dinner, and I told him the story I just told you, and he got a big kick out of it. And he was like the nicest guy in the world. And he was, even though he was like an average or maybe even above average ball player, he was very good with the fans, and he's a local New Yorker. He's kind of a Joe Torre type of guy. He's from Canarsie, Brooklyn, and like I said, he was very, very humble, and he asked me to call him by his first name. I took him down to a place that night for the autograph signing and the festivities somewhere down in Chelsea in Manhattan. I think it was on 21st Street, and in like a club they had this. So anyway, he told me not to wait in the car for him because I was instructed to wait until he was done because he was going to be in there an hour or two. So I was just going to sit there and wait. I was, part of the job being a chauffeur or a limousine driver. And
Sure.
he goes, no, he goes, I want you to come in with me. He says, I don't want you to sit here for 2 hours. So he goes,
Joe
he says,
Pepitone invited you in for dinner.
right. So he goes, you're my guest. You're my guest. So he said, no, this is at the autograph signing for Make-A-Wish. So I walked in there, and you know who he introduced me to? He introduced me to another Yankee. Do you remember Rick Cerrone, the catcher?
Yeah, of course. I actually had Rick Cerrone, the PR person, recently. But yes, I know Rick Cerrone, the catcher, as well.
Right. He introduced me to him, and he was terrific with me. And an old radio announcer from the '60s, '70s, maybe a little the '80s, a person by the name of Art Rush Jr.
Hmm.
So I used to do
Wow.
WBC Radio Sports, AM. So
Well, you know what the thing with Joe Pepitone was? He was a character. I mean, for a long time he was a character. Still is to this day.
yes, and he is a bit of a Guido, because that was his upbringing. He's a New York guy. He's just a very natural guy, and like I said, he's very good with the public, and he had problems, some personal problems in his life back in the '80s, and George Steinbrenner helped him out to become a scout. So he was scouting for the Yankees as well, trying to find upcoming ball players. So things kind of turned around for him a little bit, and that was the time basically when I met him again and drove him to the event. And like I said, Joe is a real heads up guy, and anybody whoever meets him, you will definitely meet and greet him, and you won't be sorry.
Well, Gary, this is great, and I got to ask you. So the current Yankees, we're going to see Mr. Derek Jeter get inducted this July, hopefully, praying so. Are you planning a big thing on the pages for that weekend? Like any big columns you might write, or anything that's going to be on the page that we can look out for the induction weekend?
Well, I'll treat it just like I did, like with Mariano. Whenever Mariano has a speech or has a televised event, if we can post it, we definitely will. He deserves it. Derek's been one of the great Yankees, in the history of the team. So him and Mo, they did what we asked them to do, and even more. It's like in those days in the '90s. You got to admit, we when we saw these guys, we said, okay, we knew we were going to win one, but we're good for two. Instead, they gave us four. So it
was quite a run back then.
Yeah, and it's like even though George still controlled the team, one thing nobody will ever in professional sports will never see an owner like that again, who's so involved with the team where in a sense he has that childlike will where he wants to win, and he'll do it at any cost, and at least now his son who's the principal owner, Hal. At least he didn't make a promise to the Yankee fans, telling all of us that if we're patient and wait, he says he's not his father, but if we're patient and we wait long enough, that good things will happen for the team.
Well, I was going to say, so let's say we do play this year, which I think we will eventually, and maybe get everybody healthy in the next few months. Could we see a run once this whole thing gets started?
I tell you though, I am concerned about the injuries, because nobody, even you didn't expect these kind of injuries to happen. Also, mounting this fast, what happened to Paxton, what happened to Severino, in ways we didn't see this coming. So we're not talking about trades or demotions or things like that. We're just talking about injuries. Nobody, nobody saw, like, look at this. Look what happened. We get Stanton. Stanton comes over. When he comes over, he's getting hurt. But he's Superman with the Marlins.
It's
So,
hard to fathom, Gary. It really is hard to fathom.
Oh, it makes people crazy. It's going. Look, they're all human beings. We're all human beings, and these things will happen. But it's just amazing how it was sort of like an avalanche, and everybody else, next man up. Last year in 2019, everybody stepped up. The player to me who stepped up the most, who nobody on the team right now who stepped up the most. Everybody has their equivalency of stepping up, but the one who stepped up the most to me right now, and the guy's got like ice water in his veins, is like Gio Urshela.
The Urchelas, the LeMahieus, the Talkmans who came in there last year as well. Hopefully he's back healthy. There's just a whole row of them, that came in the clutch when all these other guys were out. And Aaron Judge, I mean, that to me is probably the saddest story, because he's been trying to work hard, but he's also been injury prone, and have a collapsed lung. That's not fun at all.
See, the problem in today's world in baseball is the personal workout regimens of these players. These type of workout sessions are not made for Major League Baseball. They're really not. It's made for football and any type of contact sport. But it's not, baseball's not a contact sport. So it's really not made for that. Where, it's not, it's made for people, for people of talent, of natural ability. One thing I love about baseball, the equivalency is it doesn't matter how fat you are, it doesn't matter how thin you are, it doesn't matter how tall you are, it doesn't matter how short you are. If you got the talent, you've got the will, and you have the disposition of being a baseball player, it's going to happen. That's all.
Well, I didn't even get your take on the Astros, but that whole scenario's kind of cooled through COVID. Do you expect that to get heated up again once the season starts, though, that people will still be jeering them every time they're on a field this year, despite what we've been going through right now?
I'm just hoping it's going to be different. We have to expect the fans to know that, it's not going to be a typical opening day. We're just going to have to slowly try to get back into the game, and hopefully the game will take off again.
I don't know. They're waiting for all these restrictions to be lifted, and if they do want to play, and by May 15th, hopefully everybody can be out and about. But if that's not happening, maybe they do play without fans for a little bit. I don't know. And it's kind of weird that these other seasons have been suspended up and down the aisle, and there's probably going to be no closure to Major League, to football, to basketball and hockey, but maybe baseball will bring us back to where we want to be. I'm hoping so. That one thing about baseball, and Gary, you know this, right? I mean, it saves lives, does it not? Doesn't the game of baseball save lives?
Well, yes, it definitely distracts whatever rough times people are going through. It's a great distraction, and it is part of our American culture. We grew up with it. We love it. And especially it goes at the time of the season, to me, the best time of the season, which is summertime, where, you can enjoy the weather and enjoy a game. It's an outdoor sport, and be with people, celebrate. And it's supposed to be a time of joy. And, we're just hoping we can get back to that this year.
And I certainly hope, Gary, like in 01, we have first responders, the doctors, the nurses throwing out first pitches all around the league. Let's save the players for another day, the former players that shine in the first pitch. Let's leave that open for the, first responders, the workers, the doctors, the nurses. And you know what? Let's give them a parade down Canyon of Heroes. What do you think about that?
That sounds very good, Alex. That's a good idea. That's something that they should be definitely noted for. There's no doubt about it. Saving lives, especially here with the pandemic in the tri-state area, in New York and New Jersey and Connecticut. We couldn't thank the people enough.
And one thing, I want one more word of encouragement from you about whether or not you think, even though parks might be closed, just go in the backyard and have a catch with someone. I feel like that's a great way to, quote unquote, social distance, and it's also a great way to just keep the game alive. Even the backyard catches, you got to do something to keep you busy in the month of April.
Yeah, definitely. Even though we self-quarantine ourselves, for people who want to, jog or whatever, just, you can jog around the block and picture yourself running the bases, something like that, or have a catch, like you said. It's just good mental therapy and physical therapy as well. But, just try to keep your mind on the game, even though we're into a new phase of life, our new reality. Just try to keep a good distraction, to keep you going, and hopefully we'll get there soon.
How do you think, I'm sorry if I'm keeping it too long, but as we keep going, the questions keep popping up in my head. How do you think Aaron Boone and the team today has been doing with the congratulating of the first responders? I mean, they're on social media every day supporting, and that's what the Yankees are, right? They are a community-based team, and I think they're showing that right now.
Well, we all know as fans, but the New York Yankee organization supports every type of community or involved with the team, any type of emergency situation. They're known for that. They're known for years. George has done that. George has helped people, has helped the poor. It's like the story about Mr. Steinbrenner who helped somebody. He was a graffiti artist. And he was out of work, and he didn't want to see him doing that anymore, so he hired him. He hired him to work for him, and he stopped doing it. Changed his life. Things of that nature. The Yankees always help improve the atrocities of life, for sure.
Well, and that's why we love them. And I know you're not a big Met fan, but I think Piazza's home run healed the city as well in 0-1 for sure. So baseball all around, it's healed the city, it's healed the world through tragedy. And so, Gary, I know you're going to be on top of this left, right, and center every day. And it's just going to be the best way to get through it by covering it, right? That's the best way to get through this.
Yes, you are absolutely correct. It's just keeping all the people who love baseball in general interested in the game, keeping them informed of what's going on. And once we get started, trust me, people will start feeling a lot better about life and themselves as well.
And one more thing, leave us with one more memory you got. Favorite game? I know there's been thousands that you probably are your favorite, but really one that sticks to your heart even to this day, that you wake up and say, man, I was happy I saw that game, or I was alive to see that game, or I went to that game.
Okay, and this is another memory, another story, and of course it involves the Yankees. Believe it or not, I was at the game with my dad, who couldn't stand the Yankees, who I just mentioned, biggest Met fan, grew up with the Mets, and he was 24/7, 365, all Mets, and pushing me on the team back then when I was growing up. But I said, you're going to a Yankee game with me. Didn't like the Yankees, didn't hate them, but didn't like them because of his National League loyalty. So I went to Ticketmaster, the old Ticketmaster those days. They had outlets, so you could buy the ticket, like kiosks. So I bought a ticket to the game, and it was the game where Guidry struck out 18 batters. And that was where we were the first game where we did the third strike clap. That's where it all began at that game. Because once Guidry got like the 12 strikeouts, 10 to 10, we just all started clapping for that third strike. So that was the game. The Angels, the California Angels. He struck out 18 batters that game.
And now he's in the Hall of, not in the Hall of Fame, but now he's in Monument Park with the rest of the legends. So rightfully so.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't see Whitey. I didn't see the real great Yankee pitches of the past. But I did. To me, in my lifetime, he had a short career because they burnt him out. But to me, the best pitcher, personally, in my opinion, the best pitcher I've seen wear the pinstripes was Ron Guidry, Gator, Louisiana Lightning.
The Gator.
Yeah, and
Louisiana, another place. Thank God Drew Brees is donating $5 million down there. So kudos to him for that effort. Louisiana athletes don't get enough recognition, and I'm glad you're giving them that tonight.
Yeah. So and just the reason I think, in those days the closer didn't matter. You only needed the closer when the starter was really, really tired, because every starter, pretty much in those days when they had it, they were going 8 innings with no problem. They were throwing 120, 130 pitches. Problem is that they were burning, even though that was baseball, they burnt out a lot of those pitchers and their careers were shortened. So therefore they had to modify the game now so they won't burn out the pitchers because, of course, of their new contracts where it's multi-million-dollar contracts. So they don't burn him out. He doesn't get hurt. They don't, they can last. So obviously the bullpen now means more than ever in today's world.
And by the way, he threw a complete game that night. Guidry did. And that was pretty much the year, I believe, where they were down a lot right at the summer at the break, and then they came back and won. They had that one-game playoff against the Red Sox, beat them, and went on to win the World Series. So that Guidry performance was part of that aura of the 77, 78, 79, 80, 81 era there.
I mean, of course, part of the team back then was Catfish, who they got through free agency, and they had a decent bullpen, with Lyle, Sparky Lyle. They had a solid pitching staff, but the ace was Ron Guidry, and when they needed him to come through in those days, he came through. But unfortunately, he had a short career, which was only 5 or 6 years, and I believe he got hurt in the early 80s, and it kind of ruined his career. But he had a tired arm, and but when he was out there on the mound, the guy was a battler, and in his own way, he definitely carried the team.
And definitely so. All right, well, Gary, thank you for joining us on the Sports Hour. We went about 40 minutes, which was great, and we'll have you back. Maybe around when the season's supposed to restart, you can get us up to speed and we can continue to talk about the pages. So once again, friends who like the New York Yankees, friends who like the NY Yankees, did I get anything wrong there? And once again, the websites, just so people can get to them on Facebook.
Yeah, all you got to do is, like I mentioned, look for those titles. You'll see the emblems. And we just ask that you do support the team, and you can come join us then, and you'll follow us along, and we'll try to make your days brighter.
And for those who are on the page that are going to listen to this is more about your lead admin, Gary Walker, and our leader. So Gary, thanks so much for doing this tonight.
Appreciate it, Alex. Thank you, and all the best to you, and all the best to our members out there. And we'll get through this, and I really believe that we will get baseball started this year. I hope I'm right.
All right. Well, so do we all. All right. Thanks for joining. Have a great rest of your weekend, and keep listening here. We'll got more content coming your way soon.